Good afternoon, everybody. Big Mike back here with you once again. Welcome back to Big Mike Talks, where today I'm going to be talking about the rest of the week that was in pro wrestling. So that's going to be AEW Collision and WWE SmackDown. I'll cover Backlash tomorrow. That one should be interesting. But sit down, take a minute to relax as we go over Collision, starting us off with a timeless Toni Storm promo. Now, honestly, it's kind of a different promo because she's not in the ring, she's not backstage anywhere, she's not on the stage. She's in, like, a box seat. They are actually filming from, like, a little theater. So the box kind of looks like, what the box of the old school theaters used to look like, which it honestly fits Toni Storm's theme completely. She says, "So many men have taken shots at me. I never forget my first time. It was sweaty. It was painful. And I was hooked immediately, but it only became more risky. And hate being watched by perverts. It was breaking me body, mind, and soul. But it was something I was meant to do." And then something snapped, a beat hit. She says, "I'm talking about wrestling. Get your minds out of the gutter." Which, that's a great line. Funny. She continues, "The best thing is nothing compared to fighting for this, the AEW Women's title. And I'm not waiting for my next challenge. Line up the next tart, and I will take them down." So, and it looks like we are getting her versus Mina Shirakawa. Actually, someone else. We're going to get to her in a second. But, a nice, fun opening promo with a very popular talent. And then we go backstage for an interview with the Paragon. So that's Adam Cole, Kyle O'Reilly, and Roderick Strong. Not having Bobby Fish in this group is weird. I'll say that. So, anyway, this is Adam Cole saying... Actually, no, this is Kyle saying, "Disappointment is an understatement. Not taking anything away from ourselves. We are the best team in the world, and we're going to step up to..." At that point, we see the grizzled young veterans walk in. If you don't know them, that's James Drake and Zach Gibson, who are a very, very good tag team. So they walk in, they say, "We know why you've been losing all the time. You've gone soft. Anytime you're ready, we'll show you what a real fight for a spot looks like." So, nice, interesting little back and forth, setting up, honestly, a match I don't think we've seen. I know the grizzled young veterans were in NXT for a time, but I think they just missed out on Kyle O'Reilly and Roderick Strong. So, that's going to be an interesting little tag match. And then something interesting happens. We see former wrestler, although I think he still wrestles, Zach Gowen in the crowd. If you don't know who that is, he was a one-legged wrestler. And he used to, have the spot where his prosthetic would be ripped off. And they do the spot. And then he also got dumped over down some stairs thanks to Brock Lesnar. And yes, he was in WWE for a brief time, but he was very entertaining. So next up, we got a Battle of the High Flyers. Kind of, Angelico's more of a technical savant. as we got Ricochet taking on Angelico. And always good to see Angelico in the ring. I do miss seeing him on a regular basis. But yeah, this kind of starts off more a traditional wrestling match than a high-flying one. Eventually, Ricochet attempts the 450, but whiffs on it. Angelico counters with a flatliner. Goes for a crossbody. That gets caught into a stalling suplex. But that gets countered by Angelico. It's a couple of clotheslines. Locks in the abdominal stretch. And then does the Ricochet headbats, which I love. Angelico then lets go. Hits a... I want to say it was a body slam, but I couldn't even tell you. That was weird. Locks in the Boston Crab. Ricochet makes it to the ropes. Counters, gets in with a drop kick, clothesline, running shooting star, only for a 2 count. Ricochet then with a Michinoku driver, and then finishes it up with the Spirit Gun, which I love the name of that finisher. It is perfect for him. Then he grabs a microphone and says, "I welcome your boos. I've seen what you cheer for. I'm obviously not the dumb heel you expect, but I figured you'd all be cheering for me. I've been in AEW for at least a year. I've beaten all your favorites." And then sees Zach Gowen sitting ringside. He walks up to him and says, "Mr. Gowen, I remember growing up as a huge fan of yours when Brock Lesnar beat you down. Your dad used to be over here. Now you're there. And you got no leg in the fight, right?" So this brings out security to keep them away from each other. Ricochet then attacks security, which that should be a fine at least. Then he has one guard in the ring, and he brings out his pair of golden scissors. And he starts to cut the hair of the guard. Gowen then jumps the guardrail to stop him, gets in the ring. Then Ricochet attacks Gowen, hits the Spirit Gun. Then Ricochet pulls the prosthetic leg off of Gowen and leaves with it, which sets up Ricochet versus Zach Gowen for Dynamite next week. Huh? Honestly, I was not expecting Zach Gowen to wrestle on AEW TV in 2025. It's a treat. If you guys have never seen Zach Gowen, whether you be too young or you were watching something else at the time, he is one of the most underrated wrestlers maybe ever. And he does it on one leg. So, yeah, that matchup should be fun. Speaking of a fun match, we now got an 8-man tag team match. We got the Don Callis family, so it's Roppongi Vice, so that's Rocky Romero and Trent Beretta, Lance Archer, and I don't think it's Fletcher. Actually, no, it is Fletcher. As they take on the Outrunners, that's Turbo Floyd and Truth Magnum, the Ring of Honor champion, Bandito, and AR Fox. And honestly, this was a really, really fun multi-man. Everyone got their stuff in, which is... It was a little bit hard to keep track of. But by the end, after a choke slam from Lance Archer and a jackal driver from Roppongi Vice, your winners, the Don Callis family. And yeah, that was definitely a fun little matchup. I do hope we get a bit more of an Outrunners push, because they're still over. But yeah, that was definitely fun. We then get a replay of Ricochet taking Zach Gowen's leg. That's when the match between Ricochet and Gowen was announced. Then we get a Jon Moxley Samoa Joe hype video for their cage match coming this Wednesday, which that should be a really good one. Then we see backstage, looks like it's in the loading area of the arena, for a Jon Moxley promo. He says, you took out my guy. I'm going to talk about things I do to Joe. Joe is going to kick my ass in that ring. The question isn't, can Joe beat me? It's how long. Joe, you are someone I obviously respect, but you're not the AEW champion. I am. No matter what happens in that cage, I've been through worse. I've faced demons that keep kids up at night. And while we don't get along with the rest of the world, there's no place I'd rather be than in that cage Wednesday. I didn't build the foundation of this company on sand. The only thing that matters is who's left standing. A nice fired up promo from Jon Moxley that does make some sense. Don't get me wrong, there is some rambling in there, but that was a great hype up promo. And next up, we got the 5-tool wrestler Anthony Bowens taking on Big Shotty Lee Johnson in a match I feel like we've seen before. But either way, this was still a fun matchup with Lee Johnson with Anthony Bowens knocking Lee Johnson in the outside. Lee Johnson tries to run away, runs right into Billy Gunn, eats a big strike from Bowens on the outside. Bowens with a Faymaster, and then an airplane spin face plant for a 1 count. Then Lee Johnson knocks Bowens over the top rope, hits a big dive on him, and to celebrate, he and Blake Christian, who is out here managing him, bring back a little acclaimed scissor party, which that was definitely a bit of a slap in the face. Bowens with a bunch of super kicks. A roll up for a 2. Then Bowens with a mollywop, which is pretty much a KO punch, to pick up the win. Post-match, Blake Christian goes after Bowens, but Billy Gunn tosses him to the outside, clearing the ring. Bowens then gets on the microphone and he says, "What you saw was the pride of pro wrestling, and tonight I'm in a good mood. Daddy ass, throw him up." And we see Bowens and Billy Gunn scissored for the first time in a while. So that was definitely a nice little moment, and definitely a whole heck of fun. Definitely a fun match from a couple of underrated talents. So next up, we got a Gates of Agony promo in the ring, which haven't seen much of those in a while. So they say, "Brian Keith, Big Bill, you think you're walking through these gates unscathed? We're going to stop you in your tracks. So why do we have to wait? Let's do this here and now." So this brings out Brian Keith and Big Bill to the Chris Jericho Learning Tree music, in which I think it's time to change that up. So Big Bill and Keith get in the ring, and all four men brawl, with Keith at a severe disadvantage because he is not a big boy. They eventually brawl out to the ramp with Brian Keith eating a big old powerbomb off the stage through a table. Big Bill and Toa Liona then fight up to the ramp. Toa with a spear on the opposite side of the stage through a couple of tables. So, yeah, that was a interesting little fight. And yeah, a couple of underrated tag teams coming together to start a feud. I'm in. Then we get a Megan Bayne Harley Cameron hype video in which, yeah, we're going to be seeing them a little later. But first, we got this friendly but not really friendly matchup between Chris Statlander and Willow Nightingale. And they start off kind of, basic, couple of pushes, couple of takeovers. Willow attempts a suplex. Statlander blocks it into a face slam. Then Willow gets up and boops Chris Statlander. If you don't know, Chris Statlander had a Galaxy's Greatest Alien gimmick where she doesn't understand, communication. So she communicates through boops. Which, it was definitely stupid, but I loved it. They went back and forth on it the entire time. Chris Statlander eating a pounce that would make Monty Brown proud. Although apparently I've seen online Monty Brown was backstage this week, which is awesome. Willow then with a cannonball off the apron goes for a suplex that gets blocked by Statlander. Statlander counters into a suplex of her own. Gets them back in. They trade suplexes. They trade clotheslines. Willow with a big hip attack in the corner. Whiffs on a big boot. Statlander with an enziguri. Then Willow with a big spine buster for a 2 count. Willow attempts a Death Valley driver. That gets blocked. Statlander attempts a power slam. But that misses into a roll-up for a 2 count. Willow with a big super kick. And then Statlander counters with an axe kick for a 2. Eventually, Willow hits a Babe with powerbomb, but Statlander rolls out of the ring. Then this brings out Wheeler Yuta and Marina Shafir of the Death Riders. Yuta distracts the ref while Shafir attacks Willow Nightingale from behind. Statlander doesn't see it, gets back in the ring, hits Thursday Night Fever for your winner, Chris Statlander. So there's definitely some more chinks in the armor for Statlander and Willow. We'll see how they deal with this. Then we get a hype video for the returning Sky Blue, who has been out with injury, which is a dang shame. Glad to see her back. As she has been put into the a contenders match for the women's title on Dynamite with two other competitors along with herself and Timeless Toni Storm. Then we get a rundown of the Double or Nothing card, which is, as of right now, 2 matches. So hopefully that gets increased sometime soon. We then get a video recap of the Will Ospreay Hangman Adam Page promo battle from Dynamite, which that was pretty cool. And we get a little tag team match, playa. We got the Don Callis family, that's Konosuke Takeshita and Josh Alexander, taking on Evil Uno and Alex Reynolds of the Dark Order, which it's definitely sad to see, the Dark Order at such a disadvantage. Because I liked the Dark Order. They were a crazy group. Anyway, this was pretty much a Don Callis family beatdown for a while. Eventually, the Dark Order do fight back for a little bit. But eventually, the Callis family pick it up with a doomsday device, which that's crazy looking. And Josh Alexander puts it away with a C4 spike to pick up the win for the Callis family. And then we see post-match Josh Alexander and Don Callis himself attacking Evil Uno and Alex Reynolds. Just stomping on them. Which, honestly, that looked hilarious. We then get a video recap of the Hurt Syndicate MJF segment from this past week on Dynamite. And then we get this interesting little rematch as it's Speedball Mike Bailey taking on Dralistico of LFI. And this, I'm going to say this match wasn't as good as their first match. It was fine as it is, but overall, there wasn't really a new story to tell. Although Dralistico with a crazy Michinoku driver, shooting star attempt, but that missed. Mike Bailey attempts a crucifix bomb. No, hits a crucifix bomb into a destroyer, into a tornado kick, but that last move gets blocked. Dralistico attempts a pile driver, that gets blocked. Mike Bailey with a knee drop into a tornado kick for the victory. And then post-match, who comes out on the stage? It's LFI's leader, Roosh. And he holds out his fist to Speedball. Speedball versus Roosh? Yes, please, sign me up. Then we get a little rundown of not only Dynamite, but Collision for next week, which looks very interesting. Then we get us to the main event of Collision. It's Daniel Garcia taking on a member of FTR. So, Daniel Garcia makes his entrance. FTR make theirs. I was kind of hoping they'd play with the idea of Stokely getting in the ring. But we see that it's Dax Harwood. He's the only one dressed for action. So he gets in the ring. Cash Wheeler and Stokely Hathaway surround the ring. And the match gets started. It does kind of start a little slowly. Some basic stuff. With Garcia blocking the pile driver every which way. Eventually he locks in the Dragon Tamer, but Stokely Hathaway distracts the referee. And a DDT by Cash Wheeler. This brings out Matt Menard, who is the mentor to Daniel Garcia, and fights off Cash Wheeler. This leaves a one-on-one matchup. And it definitely picked up by that time, with Dax Harwood exposing the turnbuckle, hitting a suplex for a 2 count. Garcia attempts the Dragon Tamer, but that gets blocked. With Dax slingshotting Garcia into the top turnbuckle. That only gets a 2 count. Then Garcia with a couple of superplexes. Like he would do the superplex. Hang on. Get Dax to another corner. hit another superplex. He did that 3 times for a 2 count. That was wild. Eventually, Dax knocks Garcia to the outside, hits an axe handle off the apron, and then we see them go into the crowd for a little bit, which that was definitely interesting. I didn't realize this was no DQ. Eventually, they end up behind the announcer's table, and we see Dax kind of push on the head of Nigel McGuinness. So Nigel turns around. The other announcer, who I believe, I forget who it is, tells him to sit down, relax, you're not a wrestler anymore. So Nigel gets back down. Dax then crosses the barricade, pushes Nigel, gets back in the ring, attempts the pile driver, that gets blocked. Stokely again on the apron, with Dax Harwood hitting a low blow on Garcia. Nigel McGuinness then gets up on the apron. He gets in the ring, headbutts Dax Harwood, hits him with a couple of uppercuts, and then a clothesline over the top rope to finish the match. Am I a little disappointed in this non-finish? Yes. Am I a little excited that this may bring Nigel McGuinness back in the ring? Absolutely. So I'm going to give this a pass. Overall, this was a very, very entertaining episode of Collision. If you haven't seen a Collision in a little while, I recommend checking it out because it is very entertaining. So overall, Collision, very fun. No disappointing finish to the main event, but I do understand where they're going. And next up, we got WWE SmackDown, in which, honestly, ever since WrestleMania, WWE has just felt really off. Like, I don't know if they've... Well, I'll explain in a little bit. So we start off with a Damian Priest backstage interview. He just was about to go to the ring for his match, where he says, I was good washing my hands of Drew and getting my hands on the United States title. And here he is. In comes LA Knight, who says, no one is taking that title tomorrow except me. Tonight it's going to be you and me versus Solo Fatu. The question now is, can I trust you? Priest then says, I got your back if you got mine. So they kind of fist bump and head to the ring for their match, as it's LA Knight teaming with Damian Priest to take on Jacob Fatu and Solo Sikoa. Definitely interesting seeing the bloodline, the bloodline at such an even playing field. So we see Priest and LA Knight arguing on who should start the match, but then Solo gets between them and just attacks both of them. So we get Solo and Damian Priest starting it out. They definitely start out with some basic stuff. Eventually, Priest gets the old school cross body, which is a great move. Solo attempts a Samoan drop, but that gets blocked. Solo attempts a clothesline, that misses. Solo rolls to the outside, Priest with an axe handle. Then LA Knight hits a baseball slide on him. That leads to Priest and Knight jawing again. They get back in. Solo locks in a nerve hold, but Priest fights out of it. Solo with a big splash and then a Samoan drop for a 2. And that brings in Jacob, who hits a big senton, couple of headbutts, goes for the hip attack, but Solo tags himself in, eats a heel kick from Priest. Both men collapse. That brings in LA Knight and Jacob Fatu, and they just start brawling. Like, this isn't a match, this is a fight. LA Knight with a big leg sweep goes for a splash that misses. Knight with a neck breaker into a body slam. Hits the elbow drop, the standing version. Attempts the PFT, but that gets blocked into a suplex. Eventually, Knight hits the Megastar elbow drop. No, he attempts the Megastar elbow drop. Priest tags himself in. Gets a clothesline. Attempts the South of Heaven. That's when Knight tags himself in. But then Solo attacks Knight on the apron. Jacob with a Solo with a super kick. Attempt the Samoan spike. That gets blocked. Knight hitting the BFT for the win for Knight and Priest. And then post-match, Priest and Knight just fight. They just start brawling around the ring. Fatu attacks them both, hitting a couple of hip attacks. And just when you think the segment's finished, and Fatu holding the United States title over his head, he gets hit with a Claymore kick from Drew McIntyre, who celebrates by holding the title up over his head. So, yeah, that was definitely a very interesting match. Definitely a good way to hype up the Fatal 4-Way for Backlash. So, next up, and I feel bad for R-Truth, and you will see why tomorrow. So, Truth, he's got a big Let's Go Cena sign up. He's chanting it. Along with I Can't Hear You whenever the crowd chants Cena sucks. Although he's out in the parking lot, so I don't know how he can hear that. But eventually Jimmy Uso comes in. Says, man, what are you doing this for? You know Cena sucks. Truth then kind of turns a little cartoony to Jimmy Uso. Says, that man is my hero. He's never going to give up. And he's going to win the WWE title. So Jimmy then just little yeet, walks off. Truth continues his chanting. I am a little surprised we never got an interaction between Cena and Truth here. We will at Backlash, though. No spoiler alert. So next up, we're back in the arena. We're by the locker room somewhere for a Drew McIntyre promo. Saying, that was a big old message to Jacob. And I got a silver bullet for the Samoan werewolf. Which I love that nickname is back. I missed it. Anyway, so Drew continues. I'm a details man. Knight lost at WrestleMania. He shouldn't be in this match. I beat Priest at WrestleMania. I did what was fair and square and won a number one contenders match. And if I get the title at Backlash, I'm going to be a Grand Slam champion. And Jacob, the problem with all gas and no brakes is you hit a brick wall. And well, I'm that brick wall. So that was a great promo from Drew. We then see Chelsea Green and the Secret Hervis. So that's Piper Niven and Alba Fire. They're all dressed in black and they're mourning. They're having a funeral for the Women's United States title. All of a sudden, lights pop on. Nick Aldis and the Women's United States champion, Zelina Vega, walk in. Then Green kind of geeches. Can't you see we're mourning the loss of the title? Vega says something back, but I couldn't really catch it because she's a little bit of a fast talker. I'm sorry. So, I believe this was either Fire or Nevin saying, "Oh, you don't got any friends. Who's going to team with you?" With all this setting up this tag match later. So Vega says, "Alright, I'm down. So it's going to be you two versus me and my non-existent buddy." And that buddy's honestly kind of interesting. We'll get to it. Don't you worry, we'll get to it. But first, we got an Aleister Black video promo, which, honestly, it kind of harkens back to his, pre-Dark Father gimmick, which I kind of miss. I kind of wish Aleister came back with that gimmick. But here it comes. He starts out, "You expect me to start speaking in riddles? I buried that man. It was the truth. I came back as a tool. More than just a man in the shadows. So much bigger than good versus evil. Bigger than anything I can do. And as far as you, Hayes, I haven't figured you out yet, and I like it." So, Aleister Black maybe throwing some shade at The Miz, but also kind of praising Carmelo Hayes. We'll see that match a little bit later on. But first, we get Chelsea Green and Piper Niven. I thought it was going to be the Secret Service, but seeing Green and Niven team up again does the heart good. Taking on Zelina Vega and the woman who is revealed to be her partner, Little Miss Bliss. It's Alexa Bliss. Great to see her back in the ring. Vega and Niven start off. Vega attempts the roll-up, but that gets blocked. Niven tries for a crossbody and completely whiffs. Vega attempts a crossbody of her own that gets caught into a big old body slam. Chelsea Green comes in, starts running the show with a power slam, whiffs on the senton. Vega with some kicks, but Green just tosses her away. Vega goes for the 619. No, she hits the 619, but only gets a 2 count. Green then tosses Vega into the corner, tags in Niven, who hits a big old senton for a 2 count. Goes for a splash in the corner, that misses. Green then comes back in, hits an elbow drop, gets a big headbutt, goes for a body slam, but Vega counters it into a DDT. Then this leads to Piper Niven and Alexa Bliss tagging in. Bliss with some shoulder tackles, crazy looking leg whip. Jesus, I can't talk. And hitting a blockbuster for a 2 count. Vega attempts a big elbow. Bliss turns her around, hits a chop block into a drop kick into the Twisted Bliss, only for a 2 count. Vega then gets in, attempts to Code Red Niven, but that gets blocked. Then Bliss comes in, hits a drop kick on Niven, which gives Vega the momentum to hit the Code Red, which, that was pretty awesome. Vega then with a Meteora to the outside. Green attempts the Unpretty Her, but that gets blocked. Bliss with the Abigail DDT for the win for her team. It is honestly great to see Alexa Bliss back. Let's create a narrative for her. It has been so long since we've seen her last. This is great. And the match was a lot of fun, too. So, we see Rey Fenix. He's just arriving in the back. And he runs into Santos Escobar. Where Rey Fenix says, No. Santos, I beat your butt last week. It's all over. Santos then kind of leans in and says, I got one last thing to say. Who said anything about a conversation? At that moment, Humberto and Angel attack Rey Fenix from behind. And then officials, including Andrade, come and break it up. So we're going to see that matchup a little later. But first, we're going to have a Charlotte Flair promo. Oh, but first, we get a recap of Cena versus Orton from Hell in a Cell 2014, in which, if I remember that correctly, that was when Brock Lesnar broke into the cage. Actually, no, that was Braun and Roman. Never mind. Again, building up this match for Backlash. Then we get a Charlotte Flair promo. She's in the ring. She says, here I am, coughing off the greatest match in WrestleMania history. I was out for 2 years with a knee injury, and I took your champion to the limit. And let me show you something. She shows a picture of Tiffany Stratton. She's holding on to the title for dear life. It looks like she's out of gas. Then Charlotte asks, generally, do you think she enjoyed this moment? I enjoyed it so much, I'm announcing my path back to the women's WWE title. I'm the GOAT of women's wrestling. At that point, the entire crowd starts booing her. And I don't know if this was a part of the promo itself, if it was in the script, or if this was Charlotte Flair going off script. But she says, if you're going to continue to be disrespectful to me, I'm leaving. So then, before she can continue, the boo birds continue. So Charlotte clearly gets frustrated, spikes the microphone like a football, goes to walk down the aisle. Out comes Jade Cargill, and they pass. They have a little stare down, kind of mirroring the first moment we see all those two interact. And then we get a Jade promo. It says, wait, Charlotte, before you go, you had your chance. Now get to the back of the line. A Jade Charlotte program sounds awesome. I am in. So then we see, before this next match starts, Charlotte Flair and Nick Aldis. They're walking in the back, with Charlotte saying, I've done more for this division than anyone else. Aldis replies, well, now you're having a temper tantrum when things don't go your way. Charlotte then says, well, that's why I'm leaving. I'll see you next week. So she goes to her SUV, goes to open the door, door slams shut, camera pans, we see Alexa Bliss standing there, and they have a stare down. Bliss versus Charlotte? Yes, please. So, next up, we got a bit of a house fight, honestly, as we get a number one contenders match for the women's WWE title, as it's Jade Cargill, who was already out there for the promo, taking on Nia Jax. And before anything happens, out comes Tiffany Stratton, who is sitting ringside on commentary. And this was pretty much a house fight. This was absolutely Jade Cargill's best matchup. Nia with a big old Samoan drop into a leg drop, only for a 2 count. Goes for a big splash, but that gets countered by Jade, who hits a couple of super kicks and a spine buster for a 2 count. Jade attempts Jaded, but Nia counters into a Beal. hits a big splash. Jade with the axe kick for a 2 count. Then I guess Stratton got up off of commentary. She is about to hit ringside. Then Naomi just blindsides Tiffany Stratton. This distracts Jade long enough for Nia to hit an axe handle, a senton, and then finish up with the Annihilator for your new number 1 contender, Nia Jax. And look, I've definitely missed Nia for a bit, but I don't want to see her get another title shot. No offense to Nia, but we gotta move on to someone else. Anyway, next up, we see the Street Profits. They're walking in the back, and they're about to pass by Michin and B-Fab, which is the weirdest tag team in the history of the world. With Michin saying, "Oh, you guys look good, draped in all that gold." Ford then says, I'm happy with your performance last week. You put your foot down. And I've heard enough. Let's go. So, we'll see what the Profits do a little later on. First, we get some Becky Lynch highlights, which is very strange. And it's honestly from her first night in NXT, where she was doing an Irish jig as a gimmick. Which, I don't know, I guess it shows the change in Becky's character? I don't know, it's weird. So next we get an in-ring Street Profits promo saying, if you've been living under a rock, the Profits are the talk of the town. We put on the greatest TLC match of all time, which, that's saying a lot. Anyway, so they continue. Well, we lost everything. We used the prosthetic leg to get a leg up. And what happens if this is what happens when the Profits come out on top. Now, before they can continue, out comes SmackDown's newest tag team, Fraxium. So that's Axiom and Nathan Frazier. With Frazier saying, "Look, I apologize for the interruption, but look at us, rubbing shoulders with the tag team champions. You're the best team in the game. And remember, Axiom, you remember what HBK told us when we first got here? If you see opportunities, take it. And Profits, you're best of the best. And we saw you out here and thought the titles would look good on us." So the Profits kind of laugh it off a little bit, saying, "You guys won 2 matches and think you deserve a shot?" Frazier just says, "Yeah." Ford then says, "After 3 weeks, you really want a shot?" This brings out General Manager Nick Aldis, who says, "I like what I'm seeing here. While Fraxium hasn't earned a title shot yet, what better opportunities than Axiom facing the Profits right here tonight? So let's get a referee out and let's do it."
I couldn't find
So
that on Apple Music.
Stop it. So we get our next matchup, and it's a tag team match, and it's non-title. So we got the Street Profits taking on Fraxium. And this match was super good. Like, these two teams have some really, really good chemistry. It does seem like Nathan Frazier slowed down a little. But, yeah, this was definitely a really, really fast-paced matchup until Angelo Dawkins gets in. Then it gets slowed down a bit. Profits break out the Doomsday Blockbuster for a 2 count. Frazier attempts a big dive to the outside. That gets interrupted by Dawkins' big elbow. Axiom tags himself in. Then Frazier tags in. Goes to the opposite end of the ring. Axiom hits the Spanish Fly. Frazier hits the Phoenix Splash, which won them their match the last couple weeks. But that only gets a 2 count this week. Axiom in with some kicks. Dawkins with a big enziguri into a spinebuster. This brings in Ford, who hits an enziguri into a frog splash. That misses. Axiom gets in with Fraxium hitting a dropkick leg sweep combination, which that was impressive, to pick up the win for Fraxium. In which I am so ready for that tag title match. That's going to be fun. Post-match, Axiom and the Profits shake hands. And that ends that segment. But some setup for the tag team division is coming a little bit later. Then, because we see Tiffany Stratton looking for Naomi in the back. In walks Nia Jax, saying, "It's not easy being champ, and I'm coming for what's mine." Stratton then says, "Okay, and I'm going to make sure you got a seat at the losers table right next to Charlotte. Bye." So, yeah, the Stratton Mean Girl thing kind of works for me. Although I kind of do wish she was a heel, but it's fine. Then we get a Backlash hype video for Gunther versus Pat McAfee, which we'll get to that. We then get a little rundown of the Backlash card, which is very interesting. And we see Miz in the back hyping up Carmelo Hayes, saying, "I got you film on Aleister Black, but that's okay. It'll show you where you need to be and show everyone you are the 10th wonder of the world. If you want to play exactly as I set it up, you won't miss." We then see a little footage of Bianca Belair on the What's Your Story podcast with Stephanie McMahon, which that's a pretty cool little moment. So we go into our next matchup, which is Carmelo Hayes taking on Aleister Black. And hearing Aleister Black's NXT music, without the gears shifting, without the stupid sounds, it's just, it's one of the best theme songs WWE have. And this was an oddly competitive matchup. Although I wouldn't say odd, because Hayes is really, really good. Except they don't really treat him as such. But, this was a really good back and forth matchup. With Black at one point attempting the Black Mass. But Miz is on the apron to distract Black. Hayes goes for an attack on Black. Aleister moves, with Melo hitting the Miz off the apron. And Aleister Black hitting the roll-up to pick up the win. And the Miz, wanting a little revenge, gets back in the ring, eats a Black Mass for his troubles. So, that was definitely a fun little matchup. I would not mind these two having a best of 7 series match. Anyway, so then we go, honestly, into the bowels of the arena, it looks like, with Jacob Fatu and Solo Sikoa talking, with Solo saying, the numbers game isn't it. We need a plan for Backlash. So Jacob kind of turns around and says, game plan. The only plan I have is to dominate. Priest, Drew, and Knight, I'm going to dog walk them all. And I'm on gas, no brakes. You dig? So Jacob walks off. Solo then says, okay. So it looks like Solo has an idea. And we're going to see that at Backlash, which I'm going to review tomorrow. So we see Fraxium. It looks like they're on a basketball court, which I guess that's fine because they're on a college campus. They're celebrating their win. Then in walks the Motor City Machine Gun saying, congratulations, you guys just beat the champions. You came in immediately and made some noise, as did we. But I hope you're keeping that energy for us. Because when we have that match, before Saban could get any more out, DIY attacks both teams from behind. With, it seems like Ciampa kind of saying, oh, we didn't lose that TLC match, blah, blah, blah. So it does look like we are getting Fraxium versus the Guns versus DIY in the near future. Yes, please. Hook that up to my vein right now. And then this next little matchup, we got Legado del Fantasma being represented by Berto and Angel, taking on Rey Fenix and Andrade. And WWE, if I may ask, for Rey Fenix's entrance, could we stop with the strobe lights for a little bit? It's making the screen go weird for pretty much all of us. So Garza and Fenix start us off, and this was some pretty good, dang good lucha libre. A lot of really good back and forth, especially when Garza came in and got the opposing team over the top rope and hit a couple of diving moonsaults. Gets them back in, block on the suplex. Andrade with a big Rana. This brings in Garza and Fenix, who deck each other with clotheslines. Fenix attempts the Muscle Buster, but that gets blocked into some super kicks. Big splash from Garza, tags in Berto, with Garza hitting a big slam and Berto hitting a moonsault for a 2 count. And then after a couple of kicks from Fenix, Santos Escobar gets on the apron. Berto attempts a Rana that gets caught by Fenix for a roll-up for a 2 count. Fenix attempts a suplex, but then tags in Andrade. Fenix with his rope walk kick into a dive. Andrade with the message for the win for his team. Match itself wasn't bad. It was definitely some good lucha libre, but something definitely felt missing. Now, post-match, we see Angel checking in on Berto, who's down in the ring. Santos then backs Angel off, gets in Berto's face, says whatever he says to him, because then Berto just slaps Santos right in the face and walks off, kind of with Fenix and Andrade. So, that was an interesting little match with a nice little story wrapped in. And that was our main event match. Because we got a promo coming up in a little bit. First, we get a full Backlash card rundown in which, yeah, I'm dreading some things. Although I did already watch it on Sunday, so I already know what's going on. Then we get an in-ring John Cena promo. Glad to have you on the build for this pay-per-view, John. And he says, he then brings the ring announcer back into the ring, who introduces Cena with all these big, fancy announcements. Like calling him the last world champion, etc., etc. Cena then brings microphone to his lips, and then he kind of gets hit. I want to say it was either in the shoulder or in the gut with a beer bottle that someone threw. More than likely that person got escorted out of the arena, but that was an interesting little moment. So Cena gets out back on the microphone, says, tomorrow your childhood dies. Then be ready, you're reduced to trash throwing is because you know how important Backlash is. So does Orton, which is why Orton isn't here tonight. He's home with his family, preparing for the biggest match of his career. The first time I wrestled Orton was 20 years ago. We wrestled each other over 100 times. Because that is what is at stake tomorrow. Because tomorrow is our final match. Tomorrow your childhood dies. And I'm going to make sure you grow up fast. And I'm going to prove tomorrow that life sucks. Winners write the history books. And Randy Orton is a liar. And Orton is only here because of his family lineage. Orton is the greatest of all time and wasting time. And you're working a job a few days in a row is respect. You think working a job a few days in a row is loyalty? It's cashing checks. I'm counting on Orton to take this from me. You can't count on Orton for anything. He's the greatest of all time at doing the bare minimum. Orton begs for respect. Nobody knows Bob Sr. or Bob Orton Jr. And Bob Orton Jr. is only known for banging Randy Orton's mom, which that was a hell of a line. Orton the Legend Killer, he brushed away guys who barely mattered. Orton is going to end up as his 2006 drug test a failure. That was a shot and a half for Cena. Dang. Cena continues. Take a good look at this. I make history again. This is what the last real world champion looks like. Then we see rising from behind Cena a masked superstar dressed in some Randy Orton clothing. The masked figure attempts an RKO that gets blocked into an AA by Cena. And as Cena's celebrating, seemingly thwarting Orton, the real Randy Orton comes in, turns Cena around, hits him with an RKO. Then Orton goes over to the world title, the WWE title, picks it up, and poses with it. So yeah, that was SmackDown. A bit of a hot and cold in terms of matches and segments, but overall it was very weird. Like it you know what? I'm gonna save that sentiment for my Backlash review. Keep on that tomorrow. SmackDown, I'll admit, was pretty interesting. But good lord, it does not need to be 3 hours anymore. So, yeah, that'll do it for the rest of the week in wrestling. I hope you all enjoyed. Coming up tomorrow, I will be reviewing WWE Backlash. Hopefully you come around for it. Until next time, happy wrestling, everybody. Peace.